In this video, we will multiply monomials by polynomials using the rule of exponents and the distributive property. So recall the product rule and the distributive properties. So for the product rule, when we're multiplying two expressions together, we multiply the coefficients and add the exponents. For the distributive property, we're multiplying a term across a set of other terms. So I have A times B and A times C. So here we're looking at multiplying H times this binomial. So this monomial times H plus 4. So I'm going to be multiplying the H times the H and the H times the 4. So H times H, that uses the product rule. So we'll add the two exponents together here and get H squared. H times 4 will become 4H. I have 9A times A in this next example, and 9A times 1. 9A times 1A will be 9A squared, and 9A times 1 will just be 9A. So this expression here is my final answer. Notice that I cannot combine the a squared with the a term. They don't have the same exponents, so they're not like terms. So this is as simple as this expression can get. Here I'm distributing the 3c. So I'm going to be multiplying 3c times a negative 2c and 3c times a negative 5. So 3c times a negative 2c, we become negative 6c squared. 3 times negative 5 becomes negative 15, and then we have that c on the end. These three on this side will be on your own problems. Next, we're distributing a monomial across a trinomial. It's going to work the same way. I'm distributing x over each one of those terms. So x times x squared becomes x cubed. X times a negative x becomes a negative x squared. X times 3 becomes 3x. None of these terms can combine because none of the exponents are the same. Even though they have the same variable, they're not like terms. We have 3n times n squared, negative 3n times a negative 2n, negative 3n times 8. So negative 3n times n squared becomes a negative 3n cubed. A negative times a negative here becomes a positive 6n squared. Negative times the positive becomes a negative 24n. And these two are on your own. Now we really have to think about using the product rule as well as distribution on this next set. Because notice we have a 3xy in the term that we're distributing. So I have 3xy times x squared. That will become 3x cubed y. Then 3xy times xy becomes 3x squared y squared. Notice that I have the 3 in front of this term because I multiplied a 3 times a 1 in front of that term that we're distributing to. 3xy times y squared becomes 3xy cubed. We added those exponents. Here we had a 1 plus 2 becomes the 3. This problem is on your own. Right, next we have negative 2x being distributed to 3x minus 4. And then notice we have this plus 7x. It's worth noting here that the negative 2x is only being distributed to the 3x and the negative 4. It is not getting distributed to the 7x. So we actually have a couple different steps here. I have a negative 2 times a positive 3 and an x times an x. That's going to become negative 6x squared, and then negative 2x times a negative 4 becomes a positive 8x. But then we have to bring down that plus 7x. Here we actually do end up with some like terms that we need to combine. We end up with an 8x and a 7x that have the same exponent. So we can actually combine those terms into 15x. So our final expression is negative 6x squared plus 15x. The next problem here is on your own. Make sure you distribute that y here, but also make sure you distribute the negative as well. Here we're distributing a couple of different things. I have a 6x that's being distributed across 2x plus 3. We know that where to stop distributing because of the parentheses. We know the 6x is only being distributed to the 2x plus 3 because the parentheses stop here. Then we have a negative 5 that's being distributed to 2x squared plus 9x minus 3. So I have 6x times 2x and a 6x times a negative 3. That becomes 12x squared minus 18x. Then I have a negative 5 times a negative 2x squared. That becomes a negative 10x squared, so minus 10x squared in our expression. Negative 5 times a positive 9x becomes a negative 45x. And I have a negative 5 times a negative 3 that becomes a positive 15. Next, we need to look at our expression and say, are there any like terms that we could combine? We see we have two x squared terms that we can combine. So 12 minus 10 becomes 2x squared. Negative 18x minus 45x becomes a negative 63x. There's not another constant term, so that just becomes a plus 15 on the end. This last problem is on your own.